Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect's Foundation. Ryan Morrison had always been a builder, not of structures, but of systems, relationships, and opportunities. At 32, he possessed a rare combination of analytical brilliance and street-smart intuition that most MBA graduates could only dream of acquiring. His background wasn't silver-spooned. He'd clawed his way up from a middle-class family in Ohio, working construction summers to pay for business school, learning that real success came from understanding both the boardroom and the trenches. When he first met Diana Hartwell at a charity gala in Manhattan, he wasn't immediately swept away by her beauty, though she was undeniably stunning with her auburn hair and emerald eyes. What caught his attention was her intelligence and her family's business empire. Hartwell Industries had been built by her grandfather in the 1960s, manufacturing specialized industrial equipment. By the time Diana's father, Gregory, took over, it was a solid but stagnating $50 million company, comfortable but lacking vision. Diana herself was a contradiction. Sophisticated yet surprisingly naive about the business world her family dominated. She worked in the company's marketing department, more as a formality than necessity, spending her days organizing corporate events and managing social media presence. Their courtship was passionate but strategic on Ryan's part. He genuinely cared for Diana, but he also saw the potential in Hartwell Industries that Gregory couldn't see. The wedding was a grand affair, featured in the society pages, with Gregory proudly walking his only daughter down the aisle. In his speech, he welcomed Ryan not just as a son-in-law, but as fresh blood for the family business. Ryan smiled graciously, already formulating plans that would transform Hartwell Industries into something far beyond Gregory's limited imagination. Ryan's integration into the company began slowly. Gregory gave him a mid-level position in business development, expecting him to learn the ropes gradually. But Ryan had no intention of playing the patient apprentice. Within his first month, he'd identified 7 major inefficiencies in their supply chain, 3 untapped market segments, and a dozen potential strategic partnerships that could exponentially increase revenue. His first major move was brilliant in its simplicity. While Gregory focused on their traditional industrial clients, Ryan quietly began cultivating relationships with tech companies expanding their manufacturing capabilities. He understood that the future lay in automation and precision manufacturing, areas where Hartwell's equipment could excel with the right modifications and marketing approach. Diana watched her husband's integration with a mixture of admiration and unease. She'd grown up seeing her father as the ultimate authority in business matters, but Ryan operated on a different level entirely. He worked 16-hour days, not out of desperation, but from genuine excitement about the possibilities he saw everywhere. The transformation began in earnest during Ryan's second year. He convinced Gregory to let him lead a new initiative targeting renewable energy companies. The investment was substantial, nearly $8 million in retooling and research, but Ryan had done his homework. He'd spent months building relationships with key decision-makers in wind and solar industries, understanding their specific needs and pain points. Within 18 months, the renewable energy division was generating $30 million annually. Gregory was thrilled, but also somewhat bewildered by the speed of the success. He'd run the company for 20 years, achieving steady but modest growth. Ryan had revolutionized their entire market position in less than 2 years. But Ryan was just getting started. He began implementing a systematic approach to business development that Gregory couldn't fully comprehend. Every client relationship, every supplier agreement, every strategic partnership was carefully structured to create long-term dependencies that benefited Hartwell Industries. More importantly, Ryan ensured that many of these crucial relationships were built on personal trust with him specifically. As the company's revenue soared toward the $100 million mark, Ryan's position became increasingly central to operations. He created a network of influence that extended far beyond the company's traditional boundaries, building alliances with suppliers, clients, and industry leaders who viewed him as the driving force behind Hartwell's success. Diana, meanwhile, began to feel overshadowed by her husband's growing prominence. The company that had been her family's legacy was becoming Ryan's domain, and she found herself increasingly irrelevant to its operations. This growing resentment would prove to be the first crack in their marriage's foundation. Chapter 2. Empire Building. By the third year of Ryan's tenure, Hartwell Industries had become unrecognizable from the modest company Gregory had inherited. Revenue had tripled to $150 million, but more importantly, Ryan had fundamentally altered the company's position in the industrial ecosystem. He'd moved them from being a traditional equipment manufacturer to becoming an indispensable partner in their clients' operational success. Ryan's strategy was methodical and brilliant. He'd identified that their clients' biggest challenge wasn't just equipment quality. It was integration, maintenance, and optimization. So he created comprehensive service packages that made Hartwell Industries essential to their clients' daily operations. More critically, these services were structured so that Ryan personally maintained the key relationships with major accounts. The Meridian Corporation deal exemplified Ryan's approach. Meridian was a massive aerospace contractor looking to modernize their manufacturing capabilities. Instead of simply selling them equipment, Ryan proposed a complete operational partnership. Hartwell would provide customized machinery, ongoing technical support, real-time optimization consulting, and guaranteed replacement parts for 10 years. The contract was worth $40 million over 5 years, but more importantly, it made Meridian utterly dependent on Hartwell services. Ryan repeated this strategy across dozens of major accounts. Pinnacle Manufacturing, Atlas Industries, Cornerstone Systems, each became not just clients, but dependent partners whose operations would suffer significant disruption if Hartwell's services were interrupted. He carefully structured these relationships so that while the contracts were legally with Hartwell Industries, the personal relationships and operational knowledge resided with him. Gregory watched this transformation with growing ambivalence. He was thrilled by the financial success, but increasingly uncomfortable with his diminishing relevance. The company's board meetings had become forums where Ryan presented strategies that Gregory could barely follow, let alone contribute to meaningfully. Clients who once called Gregory directly now went straight to Ryan for any significant decisions. This shift in power dynamics created tension in unexpected places. Diana found herself caught between loyalty to her father and admiration for her husband's capabilities. She watched Gregory struggle to maintain authority in his own company, while Ryan effortlessly commanded respect from employees, clients, and industry partners alike. The situation became more complex when Ryan began expanding internationally. He'd identified opportunities in Southeast Asian markets that could potentially double their revenue within 3 years. But this expansion required significant capital investment and operational changes that made Gregory deeply uncomfortable. "We've always been a domestic company," Gregory argued during one heated board meeting. "This international expansion is too risky, too fast." Ryan calmly presented market analysis, financial projections, and preliminary agreements with potential partners in Malaysia and Vietnam. The numbers were compelling, but Gregory's resistance wasn't really about risk assessment. It was about control. He could sense that this expansion would solidify Ryan's position as the company's true leader while relegating Gregory to a ceremonial role. Despite Gregory's reservations, the board approved Ryan's international expansion plan. Within 18 months, Hartwell's Southeast Asian operations were generating $80 million annually. The company's total revenue had reached $280 million, making it a major player in their industry. But success came with unexpected consequences. Diana, who had initially been proud of Ryan's achievements, began feeling increasingly isolated and resentful. She'd grown up as Gregory Hartwell's daughter, inheriting status and importance from that identity. Now she was merely Ryan Morrison's wife, peripheral to the business empire that bore her family name but operated according to her husband's vision. Her resentment deepened when she realized how completely Ryan had transformed not just the company's operations, but its culture. Employees who had worked for her father for decades now looked to Ryan for leadership and direction. The office Christmas party conversations revolve around Ryan's latest strategic initiatives rather than the company's traditional values and practices. Trevor Sullivan entered this volatile situation as the new director of human resources, hired by Ryan to manage the company's rapid expansion. Trevor was charismatic, conventionally handsome, and possessed exactly the kind of smooth social skills that Diana found increasingly absent in her intensely focused husband. Where Ryan was always analyzing, planning, and building for the future, Trevor was charming, present, and attentive to immediate emotional needs. Diana's attraction to Trevor began innocently enough. Casual conversations about company events, shared frustrations about being somewhat peripheral to the company's core operations, and gradually more personal discussions about feeling undervalued and overlooked. Trevor, recognizing both opportunity and genuine connection, carefully cultivated this relationship while maintaining perfect professional behavior in Ryan's presence. Ryan, completely absorbed in orchestrating the company's continued expansion, failed to notice the subtle shift in dynamics between his wife and the charming HR director. He was too busy building an empire to see that the foundation of his personal life was beginning to crack. As Hartwell Industries approached the $300 million revenue milestone, Ryan had created something remarkable, a business empire that seemed unstoppable. But he'd also created the conditions for a betrayal that would test every ounce of his strategic brilliance and ruthless determination. Chapter 3: Fractures and Deceptions. The warning signs were subtle at first, visible only to someone who knew Diana intimately. Ryan noticed her increased attention to appearance on seemingly ordinary workdays, her new habit of staying late for marketing consultations with Trevor, and her growing criticism of Ryan's work-life balance. But Ryan Morrison was a man who dealt in facts and concrete evidence, not suspicions and intuition. Diana's affair with Trevor Sullivan began 18 months before the confrontation that would change everything. What started as emotional comfort evolved into clandestine meetings, fabricated business trips, and an elaborate web of deception that both participants believed was invisible to the brilliant but preoccupied Ryan. They underestimated him completely. Ryan had built his success on understanding systems, relationships, and human behavior. He'd created a business empire by recognizing patterns others missed and anticipating consequences others couldn't foresee. These same skills made him acutely aware of changes in his personal environment, even when his conscious mind was focused elsewhere. He first noticed Trevor's behavioral shifts during board meetings. The man who had been professionally respectful became subtly challenging, asking questions that seemed designed to undermine Ryan's authority rather than understand his strategies. Trevor began making suggestions about company direction that were clearly beyond his HR expertise, positioning himself as someone with broader business insight. More tellingly, Diana's complaints about Ryan's work schedule increased precisely as the company hit new success milestones. When Hartwell Industries secured the massive Richardson Group contract, worth $60 million over 3 years, Diana's response wasn't celebration, but criticism about Ryan missing her cousin's wedding for negotiations. Ryan began documenting these patterns with the same methodical approach he used for business intelligence. He installed security cameras in his home office, reviewed company access logs, and quietly hired a private investigator, not to confirm his suspicions, but to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Trevor and Diana had been meeting regularly at the downtown Marriott, using company credit cards Trevor had access to for their expenses. They'd taken weekend trips to Chicago and Boston, supposedly for professional development seminars that Ryan's investigation revealed were fictional. But Ryan discovered something far more troubling than simple adultery. Trevor and Diana's conversations, captured by the investigator's surveillance, revealed plans that went beyond their affair. They discussed Ryan's inevitable downfall, speculated about Gregory eventually choosing Trevor as a successor, and fantasized about controlling Hartwell Industries together. Trevor had been systematically undermining Ryan's position with Gregory, planting seeds of doubt about the sustainability of Ryan's aggressive expansion strategies. He suggested that Ryan was becoming reckless, that the international operations were overextended, and that the company needed more traditional leadership to maintain stability. Gregory, already insecure about his diminished role, was receptive to these concerns. Trevor carefully positioned himself as the voice of prudent business judgment, someone who could help Gregory regain control of his own company. Their private conversations, which Trevor reported to Diana, revealed Gregory's growing determination to remove Ryan from power. Ryan absorbed this information with the cold calculation that had made him successful. He felt no emotional devastation, no romantic heartbreak, only a crystalline clarity about what needed to be done. Diana and Trevor had declared war on him without realizing their enemy was far more formidable than they'd imagined. Rather than confronting them immediately, Ryan began implementing countermeasures. He restructured key client relationships to create even stronger personal dependencies, moved critical operational knowledge to secure systems only he could access, and began quietly liquidating some of his more vulnerable investments to create liquid assets for the coming battle. Most importantly, Ryan started documenting everything. Every email, every contract, every client relationship, every strategic decision. He created comprehensive records that established his indispensable role in Hartwell Industries' success. He also began reaching out to headhunters and potential investors, not because he planned to leave, but because he wanted to understand his options and market value. The irony wasn't lost on him. While Trevor and Diana plotted to destroy his position, Ryan was actually strengthening it. Their deception had awakened a ruthless pragmatism that made him even more formidable than before. He'd built Hartwell Industries into a $400 million empire, but he'd done it while playing by Gregory's rules and maintaining family harmony. Now that those constraints were removed, Ryan began operating with complete strategic freedom. He started by creating additional dependencies within the company's operations. Key suppliers were locked into exclusive agreements that required his personal approval for modifications. Major clients signed extended service contracts that specifically named Ryan as the primary relationship manager. Critical operational systems were redesigned to require authorization codes that only Ryan possessed. When Gregory finally made his move, demanding Ryan's departure and threatening divorce, Ryan was ready. His calm response, "No problem, Dad. You'll be fine," wasn't bravado or denial. It was the confidence of someone who had spent months preparing for exactly this confrontation. The changes in paperwork Ryan made weren't desperate last-minute maneuvers. They were the activation of carefully laid contingency plans that would demonstrate to Gregory, Trevor, and Diana exactly who controlled Hartwell Industries' future. The 41 panic phone calls from Gregory the next day were just the beginning of their education in the true cost of betraying Ryan Morrison. Chapter 4. The Betrayal Unveiled. The confrontation came on a cold Thursday morning in November, exactly 3 years and 7 months after Ryan had joined Hartwell Industries. The company had just announced record quarterly profits of $142 million, making it one of the fastest-growing industrial manufacturers in the sector. Ryan arrived at the office expecting to discuss the Asian expansion timeline with Gregory, but instead found his father-in-law waiting with Trevor Sullivan and the company's longtime attorney, Bernard Walsh. "Ryan, sit down," Gregory commanded, his voice carrying an authority he hadn't exercised in months. "We need to talk." The office felt different, colder, more formal. Trevor sat slightly behind Gregory's desk, positioned as an advisor rather than subordinate. Walsh avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with whatever script he'd been given. Ryan recognized the staging immediately. This was a corporate execution, carefully orchestrated and deliberately humiliating. "I've been thinking about the company's future," Gregory began, his words clearly rehearsed. "We've grown too fast, taken on too much risk. The international expansion, these complex client relationships, all these dependencies you've created, it's not sustainable." Ryan listened without interruption, his expression neutral. He'd anticipated this conversation for weeks, had rehearsed his responses, and prepared for every possible variation of Gregory's attack. What surprised him wasn't the betrayal itself, but the amateurish way it was being executed. "I'm restructuring the leadership team," Gregory continued. "Trevor will be taking over business development and client relations. You've done good work here, but it's time for you to move on. Your aggressive style just doesn't fit our company culture anymore." The insult was deliberate, suggesting that Ryan was the problem, that his success had somehow been detrimental to the company he'd transformed. Trevor leaned forward slightly, unable to suppress a small smile of anticipated victory. "There's one more thing," Gregory added, his voice dropping to a more personal tone. "Diana wants a divorce. She's been unhappy for a long time. Feels like you've changed, become too obsessed with work. She deserves better than being married to someone who cares more about deals than family." This was the moment Ryan had been preparing for, the complete betrayal wrapped in righteous justification. Gregory wasn't just firing him. He was rewriting history to make Ryan the villain in his own success story. Ryan stood slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. He looked at each man in turn. Gregory, trying to project authority he didn't actually possess. Trevor, barely containing his triumph. Walsh, clearly uncomfortable with his role in this corporate coup. "Understand," Ryan said simply. "You're right about one thing, Dad. I have changed. When I first joined this company, I thought family loyalty meant something. I thought building success together created bonds that couldn't be broken by jealousy or insecurity." He moved toward the window, looking out at the expanded parking lot filled with luxury cars belonging to employees whose positions existed only because of the growth he'd orchestrated. "But you're also wrong about something important," Ryan continued, turning back to face them. "You think you're firing me from your company. You think you're taking back control of Hartwell Industries. You think Trevor here is going to step into my role and maintain the relationships I've built." Gregory's expression shifted slightly, sensing something in Ryan's tone that didn't match the submissive departure he'd expected. "The truth is, gentlemen, you're not just firing an employee. You're dismantling the foundation of everything this company has become. But don't worry about that now. You'll understand soon enough." Ryan smiled. Not the warm family smile Gregory remembered, but something colder, more calculating. "No problem, Dad. You'll be fine." He shook hands with Walsh, nodded politely to Trevor, and gave Gregory a brief embrace that felt more like a threat than affection. Then he walked out of the office that had been his second home for nearly 4 years, leaving behind an empire he'd built and a family that had chosen to destroy him. But Ryan Morrison wasn't finished with Hartwell Industries. In fact, his real work was just beginning. 20 minutes after leaving the office, Ryan made the first call to his attorney, Marcus Pemberton, a corporate law specialist he'd been working with for months in preparation for this exact scenario. The conversation was brief and focused. Execute phase 1 immediately. Within 2 hours, 17 major clients received priority communications from Ryan's personal business consultancy, a company he'd registered 6 months earlier as Morrison Strategic Solutions. The messages were professional, respectful, and absolutely devastating to Hartwell Industries' immediate future. The Richardson Group received notice that their primary technical liaison, Ryan Morrison, was no longer with Hartwell Industries, and that their ongoing $60 million project might experience delays or complications as a result. Would they be interested in discussing alternative arrangements for project completion? Meridian Corporation learned that the custom optimization protocols they depended on for daily operations had been developed personally by Ryan Morrison, who was no longer available to provide ongoing support through Hartwell Industries. Morrison Strategic Solutions, however, would be happy to discuss direct consulting arrangements. Atlas Industries discovered that their critical equipment maintenance schedules and proprietary calibration procedures were managed through systems that required Ryan Morrison's personal authorization that was no longer available through Hartwell Industries. By 6 p.m. that evening, Gregory's phone had started ringing. By 8 p.m., he'd received 16 calls from panicked clients demanding explanations and immediate solutions. By 10 p.m., Trevor Sullivan was beginning to understand that managing business development involved more than attending meetings and reviewing reports. At midnight, Gregory Hartwell made the first of what would become 41 consecutive phone calls to Ryan Morrison. The calls went unanswered, but each voicemail grew more desperate, more pleading, more willing to negotiate. Ryan listened to the first few messages with satisfaction, then turned off his phone. Tomorrow, the real education would begin. Chapter 5. The Network Activation. Friday morning brought chaos to Hartwell Industries that no amount of corporate crisis management could contain. Ryan's strategic withdrawal wasn't just the departure of an executive. It was the systematic removal of the nervous system that kept the company functioning at its expanded capacity. The Asian operations were the first to feel the impact. The Malaysian facility, which generated $40 million annually, discovered that their quarterly parts orders couldn't be processed because the authorization codes had been changed. The Vietnamese manufacturing partnership needed immediate approval for a $3 million equipment modification, but the approval system required Ryan's digital signature. Trevor Sullivan arrived at the office at 7 a.m., determined to demonstrate his readiness to fill Ryan's role. By 9 a.m., he was drowning in problems he didn't understand and couldn't solve. The corporate phone system was overwhelmed with calls from clients, suppliers, and international partners, all demanding immediate attention for issues that seemed impossibly complex. Where are the client relationship files? Trevor demanded from Ryan's former assistant, Patricia Kim. Mr. Morrison kept the detailed relationship notes and contact protocols on his personal secure server. Patricia replied professionally. The company files have basic contract information, but the operational details and personal relationship history aren't accessible. Trevor stared at her in disbelief. What do you mean, not accessible? This is company information. Actually, sir, the relationship management system was Mr. Morrison's personal intellectual property. He licensed its use to Hartwell Industries, but the core data belongs to Morrison Strategic Solutions. This revelation sent Trevor rushing to Gregory's office, where he found his supposed ally fielding angry calls from their 3 largest clients. Gregory looked haggard, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered by the cascade of problems that seemed to multiply every hour. The Pinnacle account wants to terminate their contract, Gregory reported grimly. They say their operations depend on technical protocols that only Ryan understands. Cornerstone is threatening legal action if we can't maintain their optimization schedules. And Richardson Group is demanding immediate clarification about project continuity. Trevor felt panic rising in his chest. Can't we just hire back Ryan? Offer him more money, better terms? Gregory's laugh was bitter. I've called him 41 times since yesterday. He's not answering. His attorney sent a formal letter this morning stating that Morrison Strategic Solutions is prepared to honor existing client relationships, but only through direct consulting agreements that bypass Hartwell Industries entirely. The full scope of Ryan's preparation became clearer as the day progressed. The company's supplier relationships, which Ryan had carefully cultivated over 4 years, were structured with personal guarantee clauses that made Ryan individually responsible for contract fulfillment. Without his authorization, suppliers couldn't modify orders, adjust delivery schedules, or approve custom specifications. More devastatingly, Ryan had structured the international expansion financing through personal guarantees and relationships that made him indispensable to the debt arrangements. The Asian operations have been financed through a complex web of international partnerships where Ryan served as the primary relationship manager and operational guarantor. By noon, Hartwell Industries' stock price had dropped 12% as news of the management transition spread through industry networks. By 3 p.m., 3 major suppliers had suspended deliveries pending clarification of account management responsibilities. Diana, who had spent the morning celebrating her anticipated freedom with Trevor, began receiving panicked calls from her father by mid-afternoon. The reality of their situation was becoming undeniable. They hadn't just fired Ryan, they had systematically destroyed the infrastructure that made Hartwell Industries successful. Can he really do this? Diana asked Trevor during a private moment in his office. Can he just take all the clients and relationships? Trevor, who had spent the day discovering exactly how little he understood about Ryan's role, could only offer weak reassurances. It's probably just temporary disruption. We'll rebuild the relationships, bring in new talent. But even as he spoke, Trevor knew the situation was far worse than simple relationship management. Ryan hadn't just built client relationships. He had created operational dependencies that made Hartwell Industries essential to their clients' daily functions. More importantly, he had structured those dependencies so that his personal involvement was irreplaceable. The afternoon brought news that made their situation even more precarious. 3 of Hartwell's key engineering staff had submitted resignations, accepting positions with Morrison Strategic Solutions. 2 critical account managers followed suit, taking their institutional knowledge and client relationships with them. Patricia Kim delivered the final blow when she handed Gregory a formal notice that the proprietary software systems Ryan had developed for client relationship management, operational optimization, and international logistic coordination were licensed to Hartwell Industries on a month-to-month basis. Morrison Strategic Solutions was terminating those licenses effective immediately. What does this mean practically? Gregory demanded. It means, sir, that we lose access to the systems that manage $280 million worth of client relationships, track $40 million in international operations, and coordinate the supply chain for our core manufacturing processes. We'll need to rebuild these systems from scratch or find alternative solutions. Gregory stared at the notice in his hands, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd done. He hadn't just fired his son-in-law. He had declared war on the person who had become Hartwell Industries' central nervous system. As the market closed on Friday, Hartwell Industries' stock had fallen 18%. Industry publications were reporting management chaos and operational disruptions at what had been one of the sector's most successful companies. Ryan Morrison, meanwhile, was working from his home office, fielding calls from clients eager to maintain their business relationships through his new consulting firm. The transition was proceeding exactly as he had planned: surgical, comprehensive, and utterly devastating to those who had betrayed him. Gregory's 41st phone call came at 11:47 p.m. This time, Ryan answered. "Hello, Dad," Ryan said calmly. "I understand you've been trying to reach me." Chapter 6. The Reckoning Begins. "Ryan, thank God." Gregory's voice was strained, desperate. "We need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand." Ryan leaned back in his leather chair, looking out at the city lights from his home office. He'd been expecting this call for exactly 36 hours and 17 minutes. Long enough for Gregory to understand the scope of his miscalculation, but not long enough for him to find alternative solutions. "Has it gotten out of hand, Dad?" "From my perspective, everything is proceeding exactly as expected. Hartwell Industries made a management decision, and the market is responding accordingly. Don't play games with me, son. You know what you're doing to the company. You're destroying everything we built together." The irony in Gregory's words was perfect. Everything we built together? That's interesting. Yesterday you told me I didn't belong at Hartwell Industries. You said my aggressive style didn't fit the company culture. Now you're claiming joint ownership of the success. Gregory's silence stretched for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice carried a pleading tone Ryan had never heard before. "Look, maybe I made a mistake. The stress of rapid growth, the pressure from the board, I wasn't thinking clearly. We can fix this. Come back. We'll restructure your position, give you more authority." "More authority?" Ryan's laugh was cold. "Dad, I created $450 million in value for Hartwell Industries. I built relationships that generate nearly 80% of your revenue. I designed operational systems that keep your entire Asian expansion functioning. Exactly what additional authority were you planning to offer me?" Trevor's voice came through in the background, clearly on speakerphone. "Ryan, we can work this out. This doesn't have to be adversarial." "Trevor." Ryan's tone brightened with false warmth. "How was your first day as Director of Business Development? Did you enjoy managing the Richardson Group crisis? How about explaining to Meridian Corporation why their optimization protocols suddenly stopped working?" The silence from Trevor's end was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," Ryan continued, his voice becoming businesslike. "Morrison Strategic Solutions has received formal requests from 14 major clients to take over their accounts directly. We're prepared to honor their existing service requirements through new consulting agreements. Hartwell Industries is welcome to compete for those contracts, of course. You can't just steal our clients. Gregory exploded. Steal? Dad, these companies are asking me to continue providing services you apparently can't deliver. I spent 4 years building personal relationships based on trust and competence. Those relationships belong to me, not to Hartwell Industries. Ryan let that sink in before continuing. Besides, you fired me. You said my services weren't needed. Now you're upset that I'm offering those same services to clients who still want them. What do you want? Gregory asked, defeat creeping into his voice. Money? Ownership percentage? Just tell me what it will take to fix this. This was the moment Ryan had been orchestrating since the day he discovered Diana's affair. Everything had led to this conversation, this admission of complete dependency. I want you to understand something, Dad. For 4 years, I respected you. I treated you like family. I built your company into an empire while maintaining the fiction that you were still in charge. I did that out of love for Diana and respect for the Hartwell legacy. Ryan's voice hardened. But you chose to betray that respect. You chose to conspire with my wife's lover to destroy me. You chose to rewrite history and make me the villain in my own success story. Ryan, about Diana. Don't. The word cut through Gregory's attempt at explanation like a blade. I know about Trevor. I know about the affair. I know about your private conversations where you plan my removal. I know about Diana's fantasies of controlling the company with her new boyfriend. The silence on the other end was complete. So here's what's actually going to happen, Ryan continued. Morrison Strategic Solutions will take over the accounts that want to work with us directly. Our preliminary contracts suggest we'll be managing about $320 million in annual business by the end of next month. You're going to destroy us, Gregory whispered. No, Dad. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just building a new company with clients who value competence over family drama. Ryan ended the call and immediately dialed Marcus Pemberton, his attorney. How did the acquisition proposal go? Ryan asked. Better than expected. The Richardson Group is very interested in a direct partnership structure. Meridian Corporation wants to discuss exclusive consulting arrangements. And we've had 3 inquiries from companies about acquiring Hartwell Industries client contracts directly through us. Perfect. And the regulatory filings? All submitted. Morrison Strategic Solutions is now officially registered as a comprehensive industrial consulting firm. We have the legal framework to operate in all the same markets as Hartwell Industries. Monday morning would bring phase 2 of Ryan's plan, the systematic acquisition of everything valuable that Hartwell Industries had built, purchased at a fraction of its worth from a company that could no longer function without his involvement. But first, he had one more call to make. Diana had left 17 voicemails over the weekend, her tone progressing from angry to confused to desperate. It was time to complete her education in the cost of betrayal. Hello, Diana. He answered on the first ring. Ryan, we need to talk. This has gone too far. You're hurting innocent people. Innocent people? That's fascinating. Tell me, which innocent people are you worried about? Your father, who conspired to destroy my career. Trevor, who helped him plan my removal while sleeping with my wife. Or you, who's been lying to my face for 18 months. Diana's sob was audible through the phone. I made mistakes, but this isn't just about us anymore. You're destroying the company, people's jobs, the family legacy. The family legacy, Ryan repeated slowly. You mean the legacy I created by growing a $50 million company into a $450 million empire? That legacy, that's not fair. The company existed before you. Yes, it did. It was a small, stagnating business that your father was running into irrelevance. I transformed it into something remarkable, and now I'm going to transform it again. What do you mean? Ryan smiled, though she couldn't see it. I mean, Diana, that by the time I'm finished, there won't be a Hartwell Industries left to argue about. But don't worry, Morrison Strategic Solutions will be hiring. Trevor can apply for a position in our HR department. The pay won't be quite what he's used to, but we believe in giving people opportunities to prove themselves. The call ended in Diana's tears, but Ryan felt no satisfaction from her pain. This wasn't about emotional revenge. It was about justice, consequences, and building something new from the ashes of trust destroyed. Phase 2 would begin Monday morning, and by the end of the month, everyone involved would understand exactly what they had lost when they chose to betray Ryan Morrison. Chapter 7: Empire Rebuilt. Monday morning marked the beginning of what financial journals would later call the most surgical corporate dismantling in modern business history. Ryan Morrison didn't waste time with emotional satisfaction or petty revenge. He implemented a systematic acquisition strategy that was both legally unassailable and devastating in its effectiveness. Morrison Strategic Solutions opened its doors in a downtown Manhattan office building just 12 blocks from Hartwell Industries. The symbolism was deliberate, close enough for Gregory to see the gleaming corporate logo from his office window, but far enough to establish complete independence. Ryan's first move was to formalize the client relationships that had already begun transitioning. The Richardson Group signed an exclusive 5-year consulting agreement worth $75 million annually. Meridian Corporation restructured their operations around Morrison Strategic Solutions' comprehensive support services. Atlas Industries, Pinnacle Manufacturing, and Cornerstone Systems followed within the first week. But Ryan's strategy went beyond simply stealing Hartwell's clients. He was systematically dismantling the infrastructure that made Hartwell Industries viable while building a superior alternative that rendered the original company obsolete. The Asian operations were his masterstroke. The Malaysian and Vietnamese facilities that generated $80 million annually for Hartwell Industries were structured through partnerships that required Ryan's personal guarantees and operational oversight. Without his involvement, the facilities couldn't fulfill their production contracts or maintain their supply chain relationships. Ryan offered the Asian partners a choice: continue struggling with an increasingly dysfunctional Hartwell Industries, or transition to direct partnerships with Morrison Strategic Solutions. The decision was easy. Morrison could provide better service, more reliable support, and clearer communication than the chaos-ridden Hartwell organization. Within 3 weeks, Morrison Strategic Solutions had acquired effective control of $240 million in annual business that had previously flowed through Hartwell Industries. But Ryan wasn't finished. He was just getting started. "Sir, we have a problem," Patricia Kim reported during Ryan's morning briefing. Patricia had been the first Hartwell Industries employee to join Morrison Strategic Solutions, bringing with her institutional knowledge and client relationships that were invaluable during the transition. "What kind of problem?" Ryan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Hartwell Industries is attempting to sue us for corporate theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and tortious interference with business relationships. Gregory filed the papers this morning." Ryan smiled. He'd been expecting this desperate legal maneuver for weeks. "Did you prepare the response package we discussed?" "Yes, sir. Documentation of all personal relationship development, proof that the intellectual property belongs to you individually, and evidence that all client transitions were initiated by client requests rather than our solicitation." "Perfect. Send it to Marcus Pemberton and tell him to file our countersuit for wrongful termination, breach of employment contract, and defamation. Also include the discrimination complaint. Gregory's firing me immediately after discovering my wife's affair creates an interesting legal liability." The legal battle would be expensive and protracted, but Ryan had advantages that Gregory couldn't match. Every client relationship, every operational system, every strategic partnership had been carefully documented and legally structured to protect Ryan's interests. More importantly, Ryan could afford a lengthy legal battle. Hartwell Industries, hemorrhaging money and clients daily, could not. The real psychological blow came through Trevor Sullivan's systematic destruction. Ryan didn't need to attack Trevor directly. He simply created conditions where Trevor's incompetence became undeniable. When Trevor attempted to rebuild client relationships, he discovered that the decision-makers he tried to contact were people Ryan had personally recruited and promoted. These individuals owed their careers to Ryan's mentorship and had no loyalty to Hartwell Industries as an institution. When Trevor tried to manage the Asian operations, he found himself dealing with partners who spoke limited English and had developed working relationships exclusively with Ryan. Critical production decisions required cultural understanding and technical knowledge that Trevor simply didn't possess. When Trevor attempted to replace Ryan's proprietary operational systems, he discovered that rebuilding them would cost approximately $15 million and take 18 months, time and money that Hartwell Industries couldn't afford. Diana watched her lover's confidence crumble under the pressure of responsibilities he'd never understood. The man who had seemed so sophisticated and capable in hotel rooms and private conversations revealed himself to be fundamentally out of his depth when faced with real business challenges. "Maybe we should just try to make peace with Ryan," Diana suggested during one of their increasingly strained conversations. Trevor's response was bitter. "He's not interested in peace. He's interested in destroying us." Trevor was wrong. Ryan wasn't interested in destroying them. He was interested in building something better from the resources they could no longer effectively manage. Their destruction was simply a natural consequence of their incompetence. By the end of the first month, Morrison Strategic Solutions had grown to 47 employees and was generating $28 million in monthly revenue. Hartwell Industries, meanwhile, had lost 60% of its client base and was facing severe cash flow problems. Gregory made increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate, offering Ryan partnerships, buyback agreements, and even majority ownership of Hartwell Industries. Each offer was politely declined. Ryan had no interest in salvaging Gregory's company. He was building something far superior. The final phase of Ryan's strategy involved acquiring Hartwell Industries' physical assets at liquidation prices. As the company's financial situation deteriorated, creditors began demanding payment, and suppliers suspended services. Gregory was forced to sell equipment, facilities, and intellectual property to meet immediate obligations. Morrison Strategic Solutions submitted competitive bids for every major asset sale, acquiring critical manufacturing equipment at 30 cents on the dollar. The Malaysian facility partnership was transferred directly to Morrison for the assumption of existing debt. The Vietnamese operations were restructured as a Morrison subsidiary. Within 6 months, Ryan had built a company that not only replaced Hartwell Industries, but significantly exceeded its capabilities. Morrison Strategic Solutions generated $380 million in annual revenue, employed 180 people, and maintained operational facilities across 3 continents. Hartwell Industries, reduced to a skeleton operation managing $60 million in legacy contracts, was effectively a shell of its former self. Gregory had managed to save the company's legal existence, but its substance, everything valuable that had made it successful, now belonged to Ryan Morrison. The transformation was complete, but Ryan's personal reckoning with those who had betrayed him was just beginning. Chapter 8: Personal Consequences. The destruction of Hartwell Industries was only the opening movement in Ryan's symphony of retribution. The systematic dismantling of the company had been methodical and impersonal, a business response to a business betrayal. But Diana and Trevor's personal betrayal required a more intimate form of justice. Diana discovered the true scope of her situation when she attempted to file for divorce 6 months after Ryan's departure from Hartwell Industries. Her attorney, Robert Chun, delivered news that shattered her remaining illusions about financial security and social status. "Mrs. Morrison, we have significant problems with your divorce filing," Chun reported during their consultation. "Your husband's assets are far more complex and protected than we initially understood." Diana shifted uncomfortably in the expensive leather chair. "What do you mean? I know about his company, but we've been married for 5 years. I'm entitled to half of everything under state law." "That's correct, but the challenge is determining what actually constitutes marital property. Your husband has been extraordinarily careful about asset protection and legal structure." Chun spread documents across the conference table, revealing the intricate web of legal protections Ryan had built around his wealth. Morrison Strategic Solutions was structured as a series of interlocking entities, consulting firms, holding companies, and international partnerships that made asset valuation nearly impossible. More problematically, Chun continued, "Your husband has evidence of adultery, which affects spousal support calculations. He's also claiming that your affair was conducted using marital assets and company resources, which creates potential reimbursement obligations. Diana felt panic rising in her chest. What does that mean practically? It means instead of receiving a substantial settlement, you might owe your husband money. The hotel bills, travel expenses, and personal charges associated with your affair were paid using credit cards and accounts that legally belong to both of you. Your husband is claiming financial damage from your misuse of marital assets. The legal strategy was brilliant in its cruelty. Ryan wasn't just denying Diana access to his wealth. He was making her affair financially catastrophic for her personally. Every romantic dinner, every weekend getaway, every gift she'd exchanged with Trevor became evidence of financial misconduct. Trevor faced his own reckoning as Hartwell Industries' collapse accelerated. His position as director of business development became meaningless when there was no business left to develop. Gregory, desperate to cut costs, eliminated Trevor's position 8 months after Ryan's departure. "I'm sorry, Trevor," Gregory said during the termination meeting. "We simply can't afford your salary anymore. The consulting agreements you were supposed to rebuild never materialized. The client relationships haven't recovered. We need to reduce overhead just to survive." Trevor stared at the severance package: 2 weeks' pay and immediate termination of benefits. Less than a year earlier, he'd been planning to take over Ryan's role and marry the boss's daughter. Now he was unemployed, associated with a failed company, and romantically involved with a woman whose divorce was becoming a financial disaster. His attempts to find new employment revealed how completely Ryan had contaminated his professional reputation. Industry contacts who might have been interested in Trevor's skills were aware of his role in Hartwell Industries' collapse. More damagingly, they knew he'd been hired by Ryan Morrison and then participated in Ryan's removal, a betrayal that made Trevor unemployable in their close-knit professional community. "I'm sorry, Trevor," explained Jennifer Walsh, a headhunter who had previously placed him at Hartwell Industries. "Your resume is strong, but your involvement in the Morrison situation makes you a liability. No executive wants to hire someone who's known for undermining their supervisor." The social consequences were equally devastating. Diana and Trevor found themselves increasingly isolated from the professional and social circles they'd taken for granted. Country club memberships, charity board positions, and invitation lists that had defined their social status all evaporated as their association with the Hartwell Industries disaster became public knowledge. Diana's father, watching his life's work reduced to ruins, blamed her increasingly openly for the catastrophe. "If you hadn't destroyed your marriage," Gregory raged during one particularly bitter argument, "Ryan would still be family. He would never have done this to us." The accusation was both unfair and accurate. Diana's affair had provided the catalyst for Ryan's transformation from family member to enemy, but Gregory's own jealousy and insecurity had made the confrontation inevitable. Trevor and Diana's relationship, built on excitement and mutual attraction, couldn't survive the stress of unemployment, financial hardship, and social exile. Their romantic fantasy collapsed under the weight of real-world consequences, replaced by mutual blame and resentment. "This is all your fault," Trevor accused during one of their final arguments. "You said your husband wouldn't find out. You said your father would support us. You said we'd be running the company together." Diana's response was equally bitter. "You said you could replace Ryan. You said you understood the business. You said the clients would work with you instead of him." Both accusations were accurate. They had both been delusional about their abilities and naive about Ryan's capabilities. Their affair had been built on shared resentment and mutual overconfidence, foundations that crumbled when tested by reality. Meanwhile, Ryan continued building Morrison Strategic Solutions into a global consulting empire. The company's success was featured in business magazines, case studies, and industry conferences. Ryan himself became a sought-after speaker and consultant, his reputation enhanced rather than damaged by the Hartwell Industries situation. The contrast was intentional and devastating. While Diana struggled with legal bills and social isolation, Ryan acquired a penthouse apartment and vacation home in the Hamptons. While Trevor remained unemployed and increasingly desperate, Ryan hired top talent from across the industry, offering compensation packages that reflected Morrison Strategic Solutions' exceptional profitability. The message was clear. Choosing to betray Ryan Morrison had consequences that extended far beyond professional disappointment. It meant exclusion from the world of success, influence, and prosperity that Ryan now controlled. But Ryan's retribution was far from complete. The public humiliation and financial consequences were only the beginning of what he had planned for those who had destroyed his trust and betrayed his loyalty. Chapter 9. Final Justice. 2 years after the confrontation that destroyed Hartwell Industries, Ryan Morrison stood in his corner office overlooking Manhattan, reviewing acquisition proposals from 3 international manufacturing conglomerates interested in purchasing Morrison Strategic Solutions. The company he'd built from his home office had grown into an $800 million enterprise with operations across 4 continents and partnerships with Fortune 500 companies worldwide. The irony wasn't lost on him. The betrayal that was meant to destroy his career had instead liberated him to build something far greater than he'd ever imagined possible within the constraints of family loyalty and corporate politics. His assistant knocked and entered. "Mr. Morrison, you have a visitor. Gregory Hartwell is here. He says it's urgent." Ryan hadn't seen his former father-in-law in 8 months, though he'd been monitoring Hartwell Industries' continued decline through industry publications and financial reports. The company was now operating at a loss, managing fewer than 12 active accounts, and facing bankruptcy within 6 months. Send him in, Ryan decided. This conversation had been inevitable since the day he'd walked out of Gregory's office. Gregory entered looking 20 years older than his actual age. The stress of watching his life's work collapse had taken a visible toll. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, and a defeated posture that spoke of complete exhaustion. "Ryan," Gregory began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for seeing me." "Sit down, Gregory." The use of his first name instead of Dad was deliberate, establishing the formal distance that now existed between them. "I came to ask for your help," Gregory continued, settling into the chair across from Ryan's desk. "The company is finished. We'll be filing for bankruptcy next month unless something changes." Ryan remained silent, allowing Gregory to continue. "I know what I did was wrong. I let jealousy and insecurity cloud my judgment. I believed Trevor's lies about your being a threat to the company's stability. I participated in destroying the best thing that ever happened to Hartwell Industries." "You did more than participate, Gregory. You orchestrated it. You planned my removal, you chose my replacement, and you delivered the message personally." Gregory nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "I know. I take full responsibility. But I'm not here just for myself. There are still 43 employees at Hartwell Industries. They're going to lose their jobs because of my mistakes." This was the moment Ryan had been anticipating, the complete acknowledgement of responsibility and the appeal to his sense of mercy. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Ryan asked. "Buy the company. Purchase our remaining assets, take over our contracts, and save the jobs. I'll transfer my ownership stake for whatever you think is fair. I just want to minimize the damage to innocent people." Ryan leaned back in his chair, considering the proposal. "And what about Diana? What about Trevor? Are they part of this rehabilitation fantasy?" Gregory's expression hardened slightly. Diana is no longer my concern. The divorce was finalized last month. She's received nothing beyond what the courts ordered for immediate support, which amounts to very little given the circumstances. And Trevor hasn't worked in the industry since I let him go. Last I heard, he was managing a retail store in Ohio. His reputation is finished. Ryan stood and walked to his window, looking down at the busy street below. After a long moment, he turned back to Gregory. "I'll make you an offer, Gregory, but comes with conditions you might find unacceptable." "Name them." "First, Morrison Strategic Solutions will acquire Hartwell Industries' remaining assets for the amount of outstanding debt, approximately $12 million. This covers your creditors, but leaves you with nothing." Gregory nodded. "Acceptable." "Second, I'll retain the 43 employees and honor their existing benefit packages. They're not responsible for your mistakes." Thank you. Third, you'll sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement about all business operations, client relationships, and strategic information you learned during my employment. You'll also provide a written confession acknowledging your role in the conspiracy to remove me from the company. Gregory hesitated. A confession? Full documentation of your discussions with Trevor, your knowledge of Diana's affair, and your decision to terminate my employment based on personal rather than professional considerations. I want a complete record of what happened and why. That's professionally humiliating. Gregory, you're about to lose everything you spent 40 years building. Professional humiliation is the least significant consequence you're facing. After several minutes of consideration, Gregory nodded. Acceptable. Fourth and finally, Ryan continued, you'll have no ongoing role in the company or its operations. You'll receive no consulting fees, no advisory positions, no involvement of any kind. Hartwell Industries will become a Morrison Strategic Solutions subsidiary, and you'll be permanently excluded from its management. The final condition was the most bitter. Gregory would be forced to watch someone else control the company that bore his family name, manage relationships he'd spent decades building, and direct operations he'd created from nothing. Understand, Gregory said quietly. When can we finalize the agreement? The paperwork will be ready tomorrow. You can sign it, collect your personal belongings, and close this chapter of your life. Gregory stood to leave, then turned back. Ryan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserve better from all of us. You're right, Gregory. I did deserve better. But your betrayal taught me something valuable. Family loyalty is only worth maintaining when it's mutual. When it becomes one-sided, it becomes weakness. After Gregory left, Ryan called his attorney to begin the acquisition process. Within 2 weeks, Morrison Strategic Solutions had absorbed Hartwell Industries' remaining operations, integrated its employees, and eliminated the last vestige of the company that had once defined the Hartwell family legacy. Diana attempted contact several times over the following months, sending letters and messages asking for reconciliation or at least civil communication. Ryan never responded. She had made her choice when she decided that Trevor Sullivan was more appealing than her marriage, and Ryan never gave second chances to people who betrayed his trust. Trevor's fate was perhaps the most fitting. His association with the Hartwell Industries disaster made him permanently unemployable in their industry. He eventually moved back to his hometown in Ohio, managing a small electronics store and living with the knowledge that his affair with Diana had cost him any chance of professional success. 5 years after the confrontation that destroyed Hartwell Industries, Ryan Morrison was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as the executive who built an empire from betrayal. The article detailed how his removal from a family company had catalyzed the creation of one of the most successful consulting firms in American business history. Ryan kept the magazine cover framed on his office wall, not as a trophy of revenge, but as a reminder that the best response to betrayal wasn't emotional retaliation, but systematic success that made the betrayers irrelevant. He never married again, never trusted completely again, and never forgot the lesson that power built on family relationships was fragile, but power built on competence, preparation, and strategic thinking was unassailable. Morrison Strategic Solutions continued growing, eventually acquiring companies across 3 industries and establishing Ryan as one of the most influential executives of his generation. He built something far greater than Hartwell Industries could ever have become, proving that sometimes the greatest gift your enemies can give you is forcing you to discover your true potential. The betrayal that was meant to destroy Ryan Morrison had instead created one of the most successful businessmen of his era. In the end, that was the most perfect
Another story
revenge
comes
of
to
all.
an end.
What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.